Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome back to another episode of Always Almost There, Day After Show Live. We're here today. I'm in San Diego, Jeff's in Oregon, but we were in Eugene last night for a hell of a show. Goose is a Eugene band, wouldn't you say, Jeff?
Apparently, because we're 2 for 2, and
2 for 2.
We'll take it.
Yeah, man, it was a hell of a night last night. I mean, unbelievable venue, the Cuthbert Amphitheater. If anyone ever has the opportunity to go to this place, highly recommend. Just perfect setting in the trees. The sound is amazing. The lights were amazing. It's also due to Getty and Loomis being really good at their jobs. But it was amazing. And Goose, yeah, they threw down last night. But Jeff, take me through. You've done the last few shows on this run. We've been hanging out. What was your pre-show vibe like? How are you feeling going into last night?
Yeah, I mean, vibes are high. Oregon this time of year is generally pretty fantastic because we don't really have humidity, or it's a very light version of it. It's warm, it's nice. It was a little hot yesterday, and it was kind of funny because they were a little unorganized getting us in, but once we were in, the sun cruised down, and just like there was plenty of room. Everybody was super relaxed. It's a Tuesday. Eugene's a college town. You could see all the freshmen like checking in, you get to walk across campus to get to the venue. It was set up to be just one of those nights where it was like everybody's gonna have a great time.
Yeah, and a great time was had. I agree. It felt like similar to Seattle and Portland, or Carnation and Troutdale, if you will. We had a show in the city proper last night, which is a change from recent. But yeah, it was a treat. To get these venues that are so gorgeous. They're like in nature pretty much, and a little bit undersold, but not to the point where they felt empty at any point. Still felt like there were a ton of people there last night, but everyone had ample room. We had a lot of, basically how this venue works is there's like 2 tiers of lawn and then seats that's all GA. You can go to any of those. And then there's a pit, which was a separate ticket. And only the top tier of the lawn allows you to have like chairs. So there were some people up there, lots of people spreading out on the lawn. And the seats had a ton of space. We kind of had a theory before the show that maybe some people didn't know that they could come down into the seats. We were like, no, nobody tell them. It's always nice to have a little bit extra room, dancing space. But we were right in front of the soundboard, my favorite spot. And I have to say, this might be the best and most crystal clear sound I've ever experienced at a Goose show. Could be the proximity to the stage as well. But I just felt as though I could hear everybody so perfectly. And it was the right volume. I don't know if you felt that way as well, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I thought, so the thing about Seattle, like the band was way up high on like the stage, and then the venue tilted downward. And the last 2 nights, it was the opposite, where we were typically like at band level or a little bit above with kind of the grass going up. And I just find that that's just so much more comfortable from a viewing standpoint, from a sound standpoint. And I think just, the fact that you've got all these trees and all the stuff, and then, there's not a lot of concrete, I think just made it so they could dial the sound in, and everybody just sounded super crystal clear. I mean, if you want to nitpick, it was like Trevor was too loud, and I'll never complain about too loud.
That's not a real complaint.
I will never complain about that. But that would be like, just to give people an idea, you could just feel Trevor right on your chest the whole time.
100%. Well, let's dive into the show here. We got a lot to talk about today. First 2 songs of the show, Jeff, your opinion on Lead the Way and All I Need.
Yeah, Lead the Way just eased us in, little mustard on it here or there. All I Need, things got serious very quick. I just felt like they were kind of like showing up and saying, hey guys, this is going to be a bit of a psychedelic show. Like, I hope you're ready for it. We're going to take this couple turns. And I just felt like also Rick just pulled out some of his, rock star moves early on in order to kind of like almost just kind of like hit the crowd a little bit with like a little bit of a punch and kind of wake everybody up and get everybody kind of ready before they settled back down into the mid set.
Yeah. No, 100% agree. The All I Need was super solid. I was a little worried. Rick kind of pulled them out of it a little prematurely. It's 17 minutes can be premature, but felt like there was still they were still finding some really cool spaces in that jam before he pulled them out. Luckily, that was not the case later in the show. Chris Anthony, good point here. Was the lighting rig different? The orientation looked different on stream. Yes. Some of the venues on this tour either don't have the infrastructure to support, the 3 squares, or a little smaller in terms of stage size. So Getty went with like rows of lights instead of his full setup, which I actually might like better than the squares. But he was on fire last night. I think it was also after a couple of shows where the stage was kind of like more of an open air thing, having that band shell over them and the lights kind of being more contained by it. Plus what he was doing on the trees behind the stage during the second set, blowing my mind.
That I was going to mention that in the second set, but we could talk about it. But like just the way he lit up the trees, it just gave the venue this whole different vibe altogether. But yeah, very good observation there. The light rig was definitely different. Maybe just because we were sitting in perfect seats, but like I honestly consider putting on my sunglasses. The lights were that like intense at moments in time, and I was like, "This is great."
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Next up, we get the 230 show bust out of Dragging the Line. Pretty crazy. Only second time played. Other time was during the Austin Powers Halloween show on 10/31/21. I heard them sound checking this one earlier, and I was really excited about it. This is a great song, great cover, and cool little jam in here. I think I hope this one enters regular rotation because this is a great cover for them. Jeff, what did you think of Dragging the Line?
Yeah, you and I were talking about it before show where we're pretty sure that they haven't repeated a cover on this whole tour, which means they're digging a little deeper. And to your point, the other thing was great is like you're walking through the woods up to the venue and you're hearing this song, and it was taking me right back to like Austin Powers movies and stuff like that, Mm-hmm. But there's just something that fits so well with Goose. It's kind of these bluesy, 60s and 70s tunes. They just it fits Rick's guitar tone. It fits like his voice really well. The rest of the band makes it interesting. And this was the first thing was in my head when I woke up this morning was Dragging the Line, da 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 da. And it's just like it was just a great tune.
Good point. They did play Love Light twice on this tour. That's the only duplicate.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Thank you
to every rule.
Alec Mutt on Instagram.
Nice
for shouting that out. Next up, we get Butterflies and Walcott here. Butterflies again, like little bit of extra mustard on this jam here. Song crushes always. And Walcott, first one since last July at Resonance, 86 shows. Great to see this one come back. And for the first time in a few years, it got a little bit of a jam. Some absolutely filthy clav work from Peter in here. Nice little solo from Rick. Pretty short. But still really, really good. Yeah, John Shuley here. Wish there was a better way to end Butterflies than an abrupt pulling of the plug. It was a great take, a lot going on. I like the way it ends. I just wish it would jam for longer. But it's so good. Trey. What band am I talking about? Peter's new guitar sounds so good right now. And that really came through on this Butterflies. What did you think of these two tunes here?
Yeah, Rick just dropped down on his pedal effects for about, I don't know, it seemed like 5 minutes. Who knows if it was really, really 5 minutes, but like he was just making all these noises while Peter was like, swirling over the top. And like, it just felt like you were kind of in this like vortex of noise for a while. And the crowd loved it. It was like, it was definitely getting people riled up. But yeah, it's just always that build up to the big bam and on to the next one. And Walcott was good. It had that kind of like mini funk jam, clav work, micro funk jams are appreciated. So
yeah, a little bit of a flub on the intro from Cotter, just kind of came in on the wrong beat. There were a few flubs last night, which I thought was interesting. More than you tend to see from Goose, but they more than made up for that in just sheer improv.
Yeah, next two songs.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get Butter Rum here. Another great jam in a song that a lot of people don't really love. But this jam was a lot of fun, just like kind of dark disco dance party as Rum tends to get into. Close the set on a high note. Neil said yesterday after we were, after doors and we were sharing our fantasy picks, he was like, we didn't pick, like very few of us picked Rum. And it's like, it's coming tonight. Like it's been so reliably on a short turnaround for most of this tour. And lo and behold, there it was. But he didn't pick it. So I'm still in first. Jeff, what did you think of this run?
And that's what matters. And that's what truly matters. Yeah, I mean, what was really interesting is I felt like it was kind of like the yin and the yang going on. I felt like All I Need, Butterflies, they kind of had like some, angsty tension. And then you get Butter Rum, which is like literally the opposite of that. And what was cool is after they did the song piece, it felt like they just dropped into like, a TED Takes jam. Like it was almost like they knew where they were going and it had nothing to do with Butter Rum. So it's just like Butter Rum got them to this jamming spot. They dropped into it. At your point, it was kind of disco-ious. And that was a fun 17 minutes. I mean, I was like, they're probably going to close with this, but I didn't realize they were going to go quite that long.
Yeah, no, 100%. This set was interesting too, because I think that there were a lot of songs that I was expecting them to play that they didn't. I thought for sure we were going to get Turbulence last night. I thought that was going to be the opener. And I think last night is like we like to call it a Flagstaff show. Whereas, I mean, last night is significantly better than Flagstaff. But in terms of the songs they're choosing to play, they're setting up these big shows they've got this weekend, to a lesser extent tomorrow night in San Diego, but they've got the big 10th anniversary show on Friday in LA, and then the Frost, which is the final show of the tour on Saturday. So I think they're looking at those and being like, well, what do we want to play here? And I think that's why they a third show in a row. I thought for sure we were getting Give It Time, and now I'm pretty sure they're saving Give It Time for LA or Frost. Like at this point, they missed the window to get a Give It Time in between Chicago and now. I figured Seattle would have been the point to do it there, and then again in LA or Frost. Turbulence, I guess at this point they might be saving for LA. Thatch again could have come last night, but are they saving that for the big show? So there are songs that are coming due, but they're skipping over them, presumably to save them for the big ones. But what's your take on that, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, we talked about whether we might get a Zalt or a Big Modern. Because kind of like they were sort of in that moment of the show rotation. And it really felt like, to your point, that they were like, actually, let's take these other songs that, we can still take for quite a spin, but save some of the big guns for those California folks, which we Oregon people don't have any issue with at all, except for they keep moving here. No. I'm bringing in interstate issues here. But yeah, and I think that we saw that a little bit in the last Eugene show, because the last one was also a Tuesday. I mean, interesting to see them go from selling out an 800-person venue to a couple thousand, and again on a Tuesday. But it was like they took Born for a ride kind of thing. They gave us an Empress, but like a lot of the other tunes, I think they were looking with an eye towards California for those big tour closers.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, you're getting the jams. So, it's funny. I said last night, I tweeted after the show, I was like, Eugene does not have the best crowds, but it gets really good shows. I think we were hearing reports of a lot of people talking about some chomping around the show. There's a thing. I've seen now 2 Goose shows in Eugene. And both times there have been points in the show where people start clapping along to the band. I didn't mean for the balloons to happen there. People start clapping along to the band, like during a jam or something. And it's like, the only times you should be clapping last night was, I guess was it during Rum where Peter started encouraging the clapping? Wow, the effects are really going wild today. And then at the beginning of Pancakes. But like, if Peter is not encouraging you to clap, don't clap. Like, it threw off the Rosewood in 2023. Like, it felt like it actually threw the band off when everybody started clapping along. And then last night during the second set, there were a couple of times where, it's like they like hit a peak. I think it was in the tumble. They hit it. I'm getting ahead of myself, but they hit a peak in the tumble. And then they got down to that really quiet section, and like people started clapping like the jam was over. And I was like, no, like they're playing. Like, listen to what they're playing. So, I think it's pretty funny to look at the phenomenon that is clapping during a jam, and what, gives you the urge to do so, especially when it's offbeat. But yeah, let's talk about set break here, Jeff. How are you feeling? Your expectations for the second set?
Yeah. Well, to your point, we thought Thatch was almost inevitable.
100%.
You just felt like you were kind of getting some type of a rock god, Rick, machine gun, like All I Need, Butterflies, like some of those other spots just felt like they were ready to keep that rocking vibe going. And they were. We just got the song wrong. And that's perfectly fine. The venue is just so easy that it was great. No lines for beers. He was asking about the bathroom. He sent me a DM. He was asking about the bathroom situation. Piece of cake.
Oh, I'm sure he was.
He's really, he was really concerned about it. But there's just plenty of room. But to your point, it felt full, and so it's just really easy to move around. And I think what's funny, and I don't know, since with family and all that, I tend to stay a little bit more local these days, but it feels like these types of Tuesday shows, and even maybe the Sunday show in Portland, there's a cohort of people who are just like, I call them the party people. And like, they're going to go to all the jam shows. They're going to take whatever they're going to take. They're going to clap off beat. They're going to have a great time, but they're a little, disorderly when it comes to being like a bit of a crowd. So on one hand, you got moments where the whole place was just like vibing and bouncing and moving, and it felt like a whole huge disco party. And at other times, people probably could learn a little more Goose. But I ran into a lot of folks who were seeing their first show last night, seeing their first show all three nights. Mm-hmm. And that's great, because it's like, that's why they keep growing in these venues. And so, yeah, I'd say that set break was a breeze, and we were ready to get going.
Yeah, definitely was expecting Thatch. Was not expecting Pancakes or Tumble to come back around again so soon. But I mean, they come out for the second set and they play Pancakes. And I think both of these jams, they kind of were like, okay, we played these in Montana. The jams didn't really get there. Like, we're going to take a mulligan. We're going to play them again on a short gap. And, we're going to absolutely blow the doors off of these jams. This is, the longest Pancakes they've ever played by a 6-minute margin, 32 minutes long when all is said and done. And, I mean, is this a top 10 jam of the year? I don't think so. Is this a really good jam? Yes. I think for me, the first half of it is not as good as the second half. You get, this like nice little bliss jam. And you could tell from the jump that like Rick is into this multi-section jamming last night. Yes. He was doing that in both Pancakes and Tumble, which is my favorite kind of jamming. I love like find an idea, explore the idea, move on to the next idea, explore that, move on to the next one. That's why I love the Seattle Echoes so much. And this one had a really cool section where, a lot of the time when Peter goes to organ, it's more for like a peak section in a jam, or like a straight up solo. And this one, he kind of stuck to it for a little while. I think there was a good point from friend of the pod, Adam, on Twitter this morning, who said like, normally in like kind of like a, funky groove kind of thing that they got into, Peter will switch to clav or something like that. But he stuck to the organ, which was really cool. There were some Schofield-esque licks happening at one point, almost a Chank tease, but it wasn't. And then like just a section of it where I was like, oh, they're basically just playing switching in the middle of this Pancakes, which was sick. And then from there, it's, I'm like, okay, this is really good. We're like 21 minutes in. This is great. And then suddenly we're in like a thrashy metal section. And I was like, oh, like, okay, like this came out of nowhere. This is amazing. And there were like three very clear, wow, I'm just tossing my headphones. There were like three very clear exit ramps for Rick to take where like they finished an idea and they cooled it down. And I think a lot of other times on this tour, that would have been the point where he built it back into the ending of Pancakes. And that's what I was expecting every time. And instead, he just led the band into a new vein of jamming. So I don't know, if they talked about it set break. Sometimes we hear about bands like at set break, they go on, they're like, okay, we're going to play this for half an hour. But so I don't know if they had a discussion or anything, but it seemed like there was a lot of intent behind, we're going to jam the shit out of this Pancakes. And they did. Jeff, I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah, for me, it was like, okay, Pancakes, interesting. Well, we know we're going to get a jam, and so let's see where this goes. I think to your point, it took a little while to get cooking. There was a moment, and in 30 some odd minutes, I've kind of lost a little bit of track without having a chance to listen back. But I remember there was just a really good moment where Peter and Trevor were just locked in, and doing some really interesting stuff. And that might have been, to your point, when he was on the organ. And I'm gonna have to go back and kind of revisit. And then there was a bit of a lull, I remember, and I felt like I was kind of like, okay, Rick, like, I get, like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You searching? And so there's a little bit of a lull there. And then the metal was just like, oh my God. It reminded me, one of my very first Humphrey shows. I saw him at the Fox Theater years ago in California, and they just went full metal, and I wasn't ready for it. And I was like, oh, this is a totally different band. It wasn't quite that level. But it was definitely like, with the small venue, because it felt like we were right on top of the band sitting in front of the soundboard, and the people on the lawn weren't much further back. And so to have that level of intensity in such a small spot was like, wow, you just realize how powerful this band has become as they get used to playing bigger and bigger spots, that they can just, blow it out at a whim, in a smaller venue like that. And that's what I felt like this Pancakes was. Sure, there's some moments where they could have definitely tightened it up, but there was also some just really interesting, fun stuff in different sections, and it's going to be fun to listen back to.
Yeah, and I really, really like, when a jam, like, scratch that. I'm going to start my sentence over. Sorry, I'm tired. One of the things that we talk about sometimes is, like for example, the Big Modern from Homedale. It's 36 minutes. Doesn't really do a whole lot, but I think it's a necessary step on their improvisational journey. They're not going to get to that heavy metal section without the 22 or 23 minutes that came before it, right? So you need to get through kind of the fluff, and sometimes they click, and sometimes it's interesting for 30 minutes, but sometimes it takes a while to get there. And you get this last 10 minutes of this Pancakes, which were absolutely incredible, and they return to it at the end, and it's amazing. And I listened back to it when I landed here this morning, and I was just like, wow, like, yeah, this is really good. And then from here, we get Bob Dawn with a proper whiff. This is a proper whiff. Oh my! I was excited. I was initially a little worried. They kind of kept it in like a floaty whiff for a minute, and I was like, okay, we're gonna get like the little mini one where they just kind of tease it for a bit, but then they just go in, and just like not really soloing. Goat with Matthew Ross, it might be. I think the only other one that gives it a run for its money will be like the first one, Kansas City 2021, and I think this one just has a different vibe to it. That one is just more of like a, we're playing with whatever, Peter on piano, Rick soloing over it. But this is just like intense psychedelic with. I thought it was amazing here, and I love a good Bob Dawn landing pad. Jeff, what did you think?
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, this was one of those moments where the lights got like really dark.
Yeah.
And it was like almost like no lights except for a little bit behind. And so the trees just looked like this really trippy backdrop with this kind of like green lighting. And then you could look up and it's just a perfect clear sky. It was like about 90 at the peak. And so there's like upper 70s. We're all in shorts and a t-shirt, like super comfortable. And this is kind of what was interesting about the song selection. I just felt like, again, the word for me is like angsty. It's almost like there's a piece of Rick that has this like songwriting that just like sometimes it comes out where it's just kind of, and I feel like Bob Dawn captured that as well in some of the jamming, and it sort of slides into the metal side of things. But I mean, I go back and I think about this band is, a decade old, and you compare them to other jam bands, and they're so early in their career, and how they've progressed to being able to do all these different types of jams and link them together, even with the changes of people. And it just blows me away.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's one of the things about the Pancakes too, that like just how good they sound with Cotter, where he's been in the band for less than a year. We're getting that again, that like telepathy, he knows exactly when to switch the beat. He knows exactly when to hold back. And there was a point in, I think it was the Tumble. Let's talk about the Tumble now. Yeah. Another shorter rest song, which I guess, maybe it was like 4 or 5 shows at this point. But Wasn't expecting to hear it last night. And they come out with it, and nice extended guitar funk section. Peter starts bringing in the synths. But really, to me, what stuck out was there was a point where, they're like building this tension. And you're expecting Rick to do his and throw him into a peak. And this is where the tumble goes from being a very good, very fun tumble to a really good jam. Because instead of going to the peak, and I was taking a video at this point, and Cotter was, building it, and I was waiting for him to just smash forward into, his like driving peak mode. And instead, they just don't resolve it and just go down to this quiet space. That was when everyone started clapping. And I was like, they're doing something really cool. Like, everybody stop.
Settle down, people.
Yeah. And, one of the things that Neil mentioned, I think it was last week at some point, one of these, is like, it's really cool when they do the tension without the resolution, which, obviously eventually they made it back to the ending of Tumble, which is a big, resolution and peak. But for that time and at that moment, they left it as like a hanging thread. Yeah. And I thought that was really cool. Jeff, what did you think of this Tumble?
Yeah, I mean, I am a stand for Tumble, so you could play it at just about every other show and I wouldn't complain. And so I was very happy to hear it and see it. Classic fun disco early on, but we talk about the progress of the band. I think maybe the last Tumble that I can think of was in the Pacific Northwest, was the Portland, the Pioneer Square show. And that was, we thought, God, my brain is now not working, but I think it was like Flea Tumble. And we thought Flea was going to close it. And then they went into Tumble to close the first set. And it was just like so joyous. Like I was down on the floor for that piece of it. And just like people were losing it. It was almost, I don't know. It was just very light and fluffy. And then you think about this one, to your point, where they kind of like did this whole other thing. And it was, just a totally different jam. And you can see the progression of the band in just 2 years, how they're maturing and, introducing new things and not just going to the easy disco, almost shakedown style jam that sometimes you get. That's great and fun, but let's explore some new spaces as well. So it was kind of fun to see.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. A lot of things can happen on Picard night. He's wearing the Picard shirt. He also was wearing a hat. Not saying it had to do with it, but
it was noticeable after the last 2 nights for sure.
Yeah, it was great. And then we get Slow Ready to close the set. Honestly, in that position, I think they walk off after Tumble. Set was just short of an hour. I think that would have been the best 3-song set they've played this year. They've done a few. I think that beats Atlanta. What was Homedale 3 songs as well?
Yeah. There was definitely a couple,
if I remember correctly, but there have been a couple, mostly obviously due to time constraints. But I think this one is like, you have 2 really quality jams with a great breather in the middle. While they didn't do the Moby they were planning on doing, which I really hope they play in California. I just think that this set would have been amazing. And then you do a Slow Ready encore, something like that, even like a Thatch encore. But that has nothing to do with my opinion on what they actually did play for the encore, just for the record. But Slow Ready was good. It didn't feel superfluous. And I will never complain about that. I was just expecting, based on the time management, if they curfew was 11:30, obviously you don't walk off after the 3rd song. I was just expecting, with recent trends, they've liked giving themselves around 15 minutes for the encore. Or they like walking off at quarter to curfew. Right. So I was surprised when they still did Slow Ready there. And I think, we see that in the way that the encore is played. They do Dawn on its own. Obviously SOS was on the set list to close out the second set. And, what they ended up playing was shorter than normal as well. Like they kind of rushed through the Peter solo, rushed through the Rick solo, rushed through the Peter organ solo. And then the Rick Peak section at the end was a little shorter because they didn't have the time. So I'm a little bit sad that we didn't get the full SOS experience. Obviously, I feel like my thoughts on whether it's a song or not aside, I feel as though coming into Dawn from a hard stop, doesn't have the same kind of emotional weight as when you have obviously the whole song and you have SOS and then you get into like the floaty synth part. So that's my only real complaint about last night. Was not getting the full SOS. And really, more than anything, my favorite kind of SOS is when they just take that ending section and just stretch it for minutes of just like, pure joy and peaking. And it's just amazing. So yeah, what did you think of the end of this show here, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, if Peter or Rick had come up to me and asked me, I would have been like, yeah, can the slow ready, kill it at tumble, and play SOS for the full encore. But nobody was asking us. So, but what was interesting is when we got the set list afterwards and started to take a look at it with Garrett, as you were rushing to get to the car to drive all the way to Portland and fly out at the crack of dawn.
Yeah.
It was a very different show. There were a lot of audibles that were being called left and right. So that was really interesting.
Find a picture here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for context, what they were planning on playing last night, obviously this is one of those ambitious shows where obviously they're not getting to all of this. But they were planning on first set, Lead the Way, All I Need, Dragging the Line, Butterflies, Walcott Rum, which they did, and then Bob Don Pancakes to close out the first set. Second set, Tumble, Mist, Old Man's Boat, Moby, Slow Ready, SOS, and a Magic Carpet Ride encore. So obviously very ambitious for the time that they had at this show. But yeah, sorry, Jeff, continue.
No, you're good. And, Dawn, whether it's a song or not, is 10 minutes of absolute joy. And so I was really happy to get that. I think in terms of SOSs, the last one in the Pacific Northwest I can remember was way back in like 2021 when they were playing the Wonder Ballroom, which was like an 800 person.
22, I think.
Or 22, is it?
I think they played SOS.
22.
Oh, no, they didn't play it at Pioneer. Yeah, you may be right, because I think they were due for it in Eugene last time, and I remember we thought they were going to encore with it, but they did White Lights instead.
That's right. And I knew we weren't getting White Lights tonight because we got it last Eugene. So I was like, all right,
yeah.
Score. We were wondering what Peter tunes we were going to get, and the answer was Butterflies. Controversial take, but So and Slow Ready, just they're not my favorite parts of Goose. I just find them to be fun, but like they don't do much for me. Sure. And I'm going to die on that hill. So I'm glad they played Dawn. Wish they would have done the full SOS, but I think if I zoom out, I got to do this 3-show run. They did a great mix of new songs, older songs. We got a bunch of tunes that we haven't gotten in the Pacific Northwest, like Hunger Sight. We hadn't gotten one of those. We hadn't gotten a Drip Field because they had saved those for California the other time around because they were newer. It'd been a while since we got an SOS, so getting Dawn was really fun. Just great mix of stuff. The band's on fire. They love these venues. They did a really good job with, picking good spots that were full, but tickets were, easy to be had by folks who wanted to see him for the first time. So it was great.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. It's been a hell of a run up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm sad that tomorrow night we're going back to more of like your classic amphitheater in the city. While it's going to be awesome, it's been, the last 5 shows, 2 at the Kettle House, and then, these 3 Pacific Northwest venues have been absolutely gorgeous. And I think all of these venues, which is the great thing, I feel like every time they come through the Pacific Northwest, they're kind of leveling up venues. I think these venues are all the size that they can come back next time. I'd love to see even like 2 nights at the Cuthbert would be amazing. I think, honestly, my favorite of the 3, not just because there were seats, but I think the Cuthbert was my favorite of these 3 venues. And I think Goose should absolutely come back on their next West Coast tour. I think also this time of year is perfect weather. Like we had gorgeous, it was super hot during the day yesterday, but, by the show time, the sun goes down, you get the whole show worth of Getty's full lights, which, both Troutdale and Seattle started kind of when it was still light out. And yeah, it was perfect. No complaints about this venue at all, except for the bathrooms, which my mom mentioned had curtains in between the stalls instead of actual stalls. So you either had a porta potty or curtains. So not the best. But yeah, would love to see some more multi-night runs out west next time. But yeah, ready for California.
Yeah, I mean, pro tip for folks, if you're thinking about coming to Oregon, September is a very good month. The rain arrives about October 15th. And so you're generally pretty good for September. And so Goose, keep doing it. hopefully we see them again before then. But I know it's a long trek for them. So we'll be keeping an eye out.
Yes. Amazing. Well, thank you for joining me today, Jeff. Really appreciate it. It's been great to hang with you the last few days. We'll miss you down here in California, but we are ready. The final 3 shows of tour. Hard to believe we're already at the end. I mean, but it also feels like tour has been going on forever. We've got San Diego tomorrow, LA on Friday, and Bay Area Frost on Saturday. So we will be back on Friday afternoon, 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific, talk about tomorrow night's show. And as Jeff said 19 times during last night's show, go Ducks.
Go Ducks.
Everybody,
Go
thanks
Ducks,
for
go
watching.
Goose.
Yeah, everybody, thanks for watching.